big Canada Day plans there, Andrew?
I might actually use the smoker for the first time this year. I am going to get pork shoulder. I tried to get pork shoulder today and they didn't have it, but tomorrow I'm told they will have it in stock. So I'm going to make some pulled pork.
Is it somehow Justin Trudeau's fault that there's no pork shoulder? Is it just, that's what we like to do out in Alberta, blame him for any problem. He's why we don't have water.
I would say that a shortage of pork is never something that could be blamed on Justin Trudeau.
Well, unless they've used it all, yes.
Yeah, fair enough. You probably are like are you guys? How's your water situation, Isaac? Are you worried about your water mains busting, or is that just a Calgary specific problem?
Not something that has even crossed my mind. Yeah, I think it's just Calgary's problem.
That Calgary infrastructure at its best. All right, let's get this show on the road. Hello and welcome to another edition of Off the Record, June 28th, 2024. It is Friday. Kick back, relax. This is the point in the week where we like to, I was going to say relax ourselves, and then I look at Isaac wearing a three-piece suit with a tie. Well, William and I just threw on whatever was, hanging nearby for this. So I'm not sure if you dressed up for Off the Record or if you've just come back from serving Batman or something. But either way, I'm Andrew Lawton, hosting things for the next little bit, joined by Isaac Lamoureux, True North reporter, and also our Chief Operations Officer, William McBeath, both holding down the Western Fort there in their respective communities. But Isaac, William, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Me as well.
Did you dress up on our account, Isaac?
I did. I figured if I was to be sitting with two titans of industry, I should at least dress the part.
Well,
and you won us back.
What time will they be showing up, these titans?
How's your water? Do you have water again, William? Or are you resigned to you get 9.5 seconds for a shower or something?
Periodically running down to the river just to pick up a pot. No, we haven't really run out of water. We're being asked to conserve water so we don't run out. But there was a glimmer of hope. The mayor says we might have it all back for Canada Day. So wouldn't that be nice to be able to once again freely use clean, drinkable water as we want?
Water is not an issue here, but I had a tornado warning yesterday, and I got the alert on my phone, and it was just before I was about to go on air, actually. And the weird thing was that I didn't actually need the warning because I could just hear for the 30 minutes before that, things smacking up against my house, and then I walk outside and my trees are half just on the pavement. So it wasn't like a house smacking up against my house. It wasn't that bad. It was just it was very, very windy. But anyway, not as bad a storm as what the Liberals had to face in Toronto, St. Paul's. This has been a bit of a recurring theme in True North's coverage over the last week, but it's off the record. We're a bit of a week in review in some ways. So I wanted to talk about what really happened, at least according to the health minister for the Liberals, Mark Holland.
Thank you very much. I will point out just for the record, it was not hypothetical for 40,000 people in Toronto, St. Paul's on Monday. They did actually make a decision.
So let me take the first part of what you said, because you're right. People in St. Paul's made a decision and we're responding to that. But I think that people in St. Paul's knew they weren't changing a government. They were saying, we're upset at the world right now. I knocked on those doors. I didn't hear anybody saying, I love Pierre Poilievre's plan for the country, because he doesn't have one. He's reflected the anger that exists in the world. Well done. Where are people happy in the world right now? It's a tough time to be alive as a human being. So that was about frustration and being able to express it without changing governments. And I understand that. And that message is heard loud and clear. And for Terry, Dan, and I, we're going to dig deeper. I'm going to wake up in the morning and try to work harder and try to do more and try to meet the frustrations of those people with better effort and clearer communication. But, I don't think saying that they made a decision about the kind of country or government they want is at all accurate.
So I like it. Oh, no, I knocked on doors. No one liked the Conservatives. No one liked Pierre Poilievre. And then, everyone in the world is upset. Of course they voted against the Liberals in St. Paul's. No one in the world is happy. People in Cambodia are unhappy. People in England are happy. And, people in Toronto, St. Paul's, no different. That's the only reason. They're just blowing off some steam. My goodness, these people will blame everyone but themselves. What's going on here, Isaac?
Yeah, well, I just want to start by saying that leading up to the election in St. Paul's, I remember the Conservatives had about a 25% chance of winning based on polling, but I wasn't that optimistic. In fact, I genuinely thought the Conservatives would lose, of course, given that the Liberals have held that riding since 1993. So this is, I mean, as about as big as a stronghold as it could have been. And I thought the Liberals would, in fact, win and then use this. Oh, everyone loves us. Look, we won our riding. The Conservatives, you say they're gaining in the polls, but we still held this riding. But now the approach that they're taking, I mean, it's ludicrous, as you alluded to, Andrew. Everywhere in the world's terrible. You can't afford groceries or housing or anything that are basic needs in Canada. Oh, it's okay. They can't either he didn't name any specific places, but the rest of the world, let's call it. So, I mean, as you said, it's just a lack of accountability. But what did we really expect here? It's not as if the Liberals were going to come out and say, hey, we know we have stood against the Jewish community, and we see reflected in the data here that I think it was 63% of Jewish people in that riding voted Conservative, unsurprisingly. So they're not going to apologize. They're just going to shift the blame as much as they can.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a particular tone deafness there. And it's interesting because most of the Liberal cabinet ministers to be trotted out this week are all there just to say, I have confidence in Justin Trudeau. He is our leader. Like Mark Holland was the first one to kind of break from the script, at least. So I believe he's speaking from the heart there in a sense. And, saying what he really thinks, which is, that this election, I think he believes it. He believes that this election just means nothing and that, the Liberals losing in Midtown Toronto is no biggie. It's just everyone's angry. Well, again, no introspection there, William. Any surprise?
Yeah, it's funny. I think if the Liberal cabinet had spent any more time in St. Paul's, they would have had to buy houses there. A few of the people in Canada who can actually afford houses, given their very high salaries, they put everything they had into this by-election. And that means that because they lost it, they all have to wear it, including the Prime Minister. If you throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at a by-election and then lose it, you have no choice but to own it. I think the fact that Mark Holland is saying, well, everybody's unhappy in the whole world. I've personally called them all, and they told me they were. Just shows exactly how in denial they really are about how bad things are. I will be honest. I thought the Liberals were going to win Toronto St. Paul's. They were leading when I went to bed. And to wake up the next morning and discover the Conservative Party won was a shock to me. I'm not going to say it wasn't a happy shock, but the fact is that if this riding is vulnerable, there is no longer a safe Liberal seat in the entire country, and the fact that they can't see what the message was from voters, turning a safe Liberal seat blue, shows that these people don't even know there's a problem, let alone how to fix it. They haven't figured out they're in that much trouble. They're still saying, actually, things are fine. Look, we're just as unpopular as the rest of the world. Well, okay, let's see how well that serves you when you go before voters in the next election.
Yeah, and I just want to give the contrast on perhaps why people might not have been voting with the Liberals. This is what Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland had said before the by-election took place.
That is Leslie's vision. That's the Liberal vision. That's why I'm really calling on the people of St. Paul's to go out there and vote for her. Because the alternative is really cold and cruel and small. The alternative is cuts and austerity, not believing in ourselves as a country, not believing in our communities and in our neighbors.
Cold, cruel, small. Well, what does it say about you, Minister or Deputy Prime Minister, that's the vision that Canadians voted for? Maybe they didn't actually buy into that idea. I don't think it's fair to malign the good people of Toronto St. Paul's of just being small-minded and cold and cruel just because they didn't believe that the Liberals are the ones that have their back. But maybe they're all just angry. Maybe they're all just angry at the world, and that's the rationale there. What do you guys make of that?
Yeah, I can't believe that the communications plan prior to the election was, hey, let's go out on stage and smack talk the district's voters. Who thought that could have gone over well? I mean, I don't know how well Freeland was prepared for that speech, but I don't understand how that got by anyone without raising serious red flags. Like, hey, maybe the day before the election, I don't know if it was the day before, but it was close to the day before the election, we shouldn't go and call people in a district cold, cruel, and small. I mean, that's about as ludicrous as it gets, in my opinion.
Yeah. What were you going to say, William?
Well, I would just say it's interesting because, of course, Chrystia Freeland's riding, I believe, is right next door to Toronto St. Paul's, or if not next door, nearby. It should be giving the finance minister some worry that if a safe riding like Toronto St. Paul's could fall, maybe hers is next. But, when you get something that wrong and suffer a loss, some people would say it's time to be humble. It's time to look at and fairly evaluate whether or not what you've been offering to Canadians is something they actually want. And in the case of Chrystia Freeland, painting where now a near majority of the country stands as cold, cruel, and small is not how you win back swing voters who used to support your party and have now switched to your opposition. You should be taking this as a time to change course, not double down on the very things that make voters flee from your party and pursue an option that heretofore have been considered unthinkable in a riding like Toronto St. Paul. So, I reiterate, these are people who haven't even quantified the problem and acknowledged it, let alone are actively trying to fix it.
Yeah, and just to talk about Chrystia Freeland's riding for a moment. So she's in University Rosedale, again, one of those, suburban midtown Toronto ridings. Not one that's going to go conservative anytime soon, but could very much go NDP if there were a stronger NDP there. Now, I'm looking at 338 Canada's projections right now. These are from, I believe, Sunday. And they have the Liberals at 36% plus or minus 7, because riding level polls have a large margin of error, and the NDP at plus or minus 30. Which means, in theory, the NDP could be neck and neck with the Liberals. They could be further behind. But that's not great. And if the NDP were to step up its game, which it has not under Jagmeet Singh, and may not unless there's another leader at the helm, that could be really disastrous for people like Freeland, who previously I never would have thought in a million years could be at risk of losing her seat or even really having to fight for it.
Yeah, if the New Democrats weren't quite such a basket case, the news for the Liberals would be even more dire. Like, if you can imagine that the New Democrats nationally managed to claw even 2% from the Liberal Party, that puts ridings not only in danger, it takes a huge chunk of ridings even out of contention for the Liberal Party in the next election, particularly around the GTA area, that part of Toronto that's maybe not suburban or ex-urban, but that is closer to the middle of it, and it puts them in a huge problem in the Greater Vancouver area. One of the few places where the Liberal Party used to be able to reliably count on a chunk of seats. So, no, I mean, look, there's no good news for the Liberal Party in the results of this by-election. There's no possible way to spin it, except for, I guess, Leslie Church won't be going to Ottawa, so think of all the carbon emissions we're saving by not having a commuter back and forth.
Fair enough. I mentioned the NDP. I have to talk about Jagmeet Singh here, because the NDP's performance in that by-election was absolutely nothing to be excited about if you're the NDP. Their candidate got 10.9%, which is a 5-point drop from where the NDP have been in the last, I think, 3 elections. Now, obviously, by-elections are weird, like things happen there, but it's not exactly instilling confidence in the NDP being the progressive alternative to the Liberals. And that's what the NDP wants to be. That's its MO. It's not doing that right now. And, Jagmeet Singh, it's not surprising that he still is not talking about wanting to pull the plug on his really unqualified support of the Liberals. So he was asked at a press conference yesterday about whether he'll finally, once and for all, end the NDP's 4-year supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals. And this is what he said, or should I say didn't say.
Given the Liberals having lost the seat and the NDP's low performance in a seat that you hold provincially, do you think it's time to pull out of the supply and confidence agreement? Is that something that you're going to do?
Our plan right now is what we've always said. Our goal is to get Ottawa to work for people. We said that from the beginning. That's been my goal. And we're going to use the power we have to make that happen. Justin Trudeau has let people down. It's very clear. Pierre Poilievre wants to cut and gut the services that people need very desperately. And so people are counting on us, and I get that. So we're going to keep on fighting to make sure Ottawa delivers for you. That's why I'm going to be listening to people across the summer. We're going to be hearing from people about how we change the rules to tip the scales in their favor, because the decks are stacked against people. It is so clear the deck is stacked against you when you're working harder than ever before and you can't pay your bills. When you go in the grocery store and you try to buy what you could afford before and you can't afford it anymore. When you can't afford your groceries, let alone the special treats for your loved ones. When you can't find a home in your city that you live in. You can't find a place to rent in Toronto. It's clear that the rules are not in your favor, and we got to change that. We got to make the rules in favor of people, and that's going to require some courage, and it's clear that neither the Liberals or Conservatives are going to do that.
It sounds like he's saying Canada is broken and the things are broken. But again, no yes or no. Did you find a yes or no to the question in there, Isaac? Like, what would you decipher that as being if the question was, will you pull your support of the Liberal government?
Well, no, I didn't really find an answer. And I mean, Singh usually does that, wherein his actions really don't match his words, I find. He's always talking about how well, first of all, a few months ago, he said he was going to be the Prime Minister of Canada. I remember that. That was laughable, let's say. Anyways.
No, it's good comedy for sure.
He always says he's going to hold the Liberals to account. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. He's always... I mean, some of the posts I've seen from him online attacking the Liberals, it's like, you're the person allowing this to happen. So, I mean, yeah, he says all the right things in theory, but he doesn't do anything that he says. He doesn't hold the government to account in any way, shape, or form. I don't know that he's helping the NDP in any way. They're really... if the NDP were polling better, as you guys alluded to earlier, the Liberals would honestly be at risk of potentially following to a third-rated party, which I don't know the precedent around that, how common that is that a governing party may fall into third place. But I mean, that would be something, wouldn't it?
William?
Well, now I'm slightly worried about him. Is it possible he was drunk during that press conference? He talked about I think he meant to say the deck is stacked against him. And he said
the stacks are decked against the working man. The stacks are decked.
And did he say Canadians can't afford special trees at one point?
I thought he said treats, a treat for your family.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he did. But suffice to say, if you look up the word hapless in the dictionary, I think there's now got to be a picture of Jagmeet saying no one has been a more hapless leader of and particularly if you think about it, in a minority government, that's when opposition parties should have more power. They should have more influence. And, I think back to the Paul Martin minority, and which was a long time ago, but I'm an old person, so I remember it. And,
That's 20 years.
Jack Layton, who was the NDP leader then, he was able to extract real things from the Liberals and put them on notice of every confidence vote saying, here's my list of demands, and I want this and this and this, or I'll vote against you. Whereas Jagmeet Singh says, well, we know Justin Trudeau has failed, and I'm doing everything I can to continue enabling his failure for Canadians. I will make sure he fails for a full 4-year term rather than, I don't know, ending the failure sooner and attempting to replace him. It makes no sense. And I think, why he won't pull out of the agreement is he knows that the number of seats he has right now is the high watermark. If and when the NDP go back in front of Canadians, they'll have to explain why they were partners in crime to a deeply unpopular, deeply unsuccessful Liberal government. And I think they're going to feel the wrath of Canadians just as much as the Liberal Party will.
Yeah, it's the oldest joke now in this whole thing. When every time he comes up and speaks about, the Liberals are failing Canadians, the Liberals and Conservatives have it out for you, and it's like, well, yeah, but you are single-handedly keeping them in power. Like, it doesn't take a genius to find the logical inconsistency in the entire NDP thing. And the concessions, the quote-unquote concessions, have been virtually non-existent. I mean, he was promised universal pharmacare and got birth control and a diabetes drug. He was promised dental care and has a dental program that's not even really reaching that many people, and he's trying to claim this as a big win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fact that he's trying to paint up this dismal record, I don't think it's going unnoticed. It must be infuriating to be a New Democrat right now, to be someone who thinks, we've got a minority government that's predisposed to leaning left. on all of these issues, and I've got my party that could keep this government in power, why am I not extracting things left, right, and center? Why aren't we building statues of new Democrat leaders in every major city and demanding that the federal government pay for it?
Yeah.
Instead, we're getting a dental plan that even dentists think is terrible and won't work for Canadians, and a pharmacare plan that in no way replaces the private insurance that millions of Canadians get from their employers and is now at risk of being clawed back because of this ill-considered national pharmacare plan. So no, not a happy time to be a New Democrat.
Isaac, last word to you.
Yeah, just I did do an article on the dentist thing earlier today, and I remember it was the Canadian Dental Association. They said I think it was 61% of dentists were not interested in any way, shape, or form of signing up for the federal dental plan. And then just one comment quickly on William's memory of Jack Layton. I feel that if Singh did a similar thing with a list of demands for Trudeau and said, "Hey, you need to do these things, or else I'll call a non-confidence vote," I honestly think Trudeau would say to him, "No, you won't. Like, I don't believe you. I don't think that you will. I'm not doing what you say. I'm just going to go my own way." Of course, he might not say it so explicitly, but that's what he would do.
Fair enough. The other related aspect of this is that Trudeau's global reputation and his reputation outside of, well, basically like 6 people in downtown Montreal has been taking a hit, particularly lately. I got a couple of examples of this. Do we want to start with Australia or start with Kevin O'Leary? Let's start with Kevin O'Leary. This ties into Chrystia Freeland as well. This is Kevin O'Leary sharing his thoughts in that Mr. Wonderful way.
Economic outlook for Canada in the short term, that would include the impact from higher borrowing costs. Longer term, though, subjects such as productivity, standard of living, and an economic transition are big issues for the country. We're back again with Kevin O'Leary, chairman of O'Leary Ventures. You are here in Canada. You're not always here in Canada these days. But in terms of what you see when it comes to the Canadian economy, what springs to mind?
Missed opportunity is the 2 words I would use. We are such a wealthy country, and we are so poorly managed from a policy basis. When I think about the tremendous potential the country has in natural resources, which was the essence of its success from the beginning over the last 200 years, and we've ignored it, and we have tried to do many other things that have nothing to do with our core wealth. And I can't help but blame Justin Trudeau for that for the last decade. He's a weak manager, in my opinion, a very successful politician, but a very, very weak manager in understanding what actually makes Canada tick.
Yeah, he's bang on there. These people couldn't run a bodega, and yet they're running the country. And I think his comments about how just like woefully unqualified these people are, even with the experience. Like, that's the thing. Chrystia Freeland has a few years of experience as finance minister. Justin Trudeau has 9 years experience under his belt as prime minister. The experience hasn't really helped them. I don't think they're getting better. Do you guys?
No, and it's funny because I had written about O'Leary, I think it was in March or April, and he said some of the same things. One was Canada, if you look at resources per capita, is one of the richest countries on earth, run by complete idiots. Although it was interesting this time watching O'Leary's full interview, he was a lot more direct with his blows, by specifically calling out both Trudeau and Freeland by name and saying, "This is what's wrong with these people. We need to," well, he actually called for scraping out and restarting Parliament office completely. And he even said, "We need a Canada 2.0. We need to scrape and rake out everyone in Parliament and start from scratch. And we can do something special with this country. But the way we're going right now is headed for a complete disaster."
Yeah, I don't want to put too much stock in Kevin O'Leary. Like, he's a bombastic pundit. I think he's got a solid head on business issues. So I didn't quite buy into this whole Kevin O'Leary as a conservative thing when he was running for the leadership of the Conservatives a few years back. However, I think his criticisms on the government are coming from the business side of him, and he's saying like this is just absolutely absurd.
We're seeing a real economic crisis starting to foment here in Canada. Our productivity, which is an amorphous concept that doesn't get well defined. People talk about how we have a productivity problem. Basically, how much we generate, how much we produce, what our country makes is going down. And as a result, our GDP is crashing. It only looks better than it is because of our huge numbers of new people coming to Canada every year. Millions of people coming to Canada are artificially inflating our GDP growth. But if you look at it on a per person basis, it's absolutely tumbling. And people, I think, anecdotally can feel this. They're not getting paid more in their jobs. They're seeing fewer good jobs being created. They're having to work longer hours. They're having to do without more things because they can't afford, the kinds of things they want to buy. They can't afford housing. They can't afford groceries. They certainly can't afford luxury items. And all of this is really starting to rankle in Canada. And if we weren't so blessed, I would say lucky as a country, things would be so much worse. If we were a country that actually had really difficult circumstances, we would be all but drowning in our economic troubles. I mean, as Kevin points out, we are vastly blessed. We have tons of natural resources. We have good infrastructure by and large, except for where I live here in Calgary, where the water pipe exploded. We have tremendous assets compared to so many other people. And even still, it's tough times. Imagine how hard it would be if we didn't have all those advantages. But they won't last forever. If we keep squandering our opportunity, we are at risk of becoming a really difficult country, a place that people no longer want to come to, a place that no longer offers the same opportunity it used to.
Another thing Larry mentioned, which is worth mentioning quickly, because we've done a lot of reporting about this at True North, is he talked from direct experience about the new capital gains tax hike, which just came into effect. And he said, look, he probably has hundreds of millions, if not billions of assets in Canada. He said, look, the accountants have been telling me and other people like me how to get our assets out of Canada, how to pay the old tax rate, which was the 50% instead of the three quarters or 2/3, sorry, 66%. Yeah. How to get our assets out of Canada. So these people are divesting their assets from Canada to save money. I mean, it's obviously a terrible, terrible price that we're going to pay in the long term, which is exactly what he said. Like, Canada will pay for this for decades if it is not fixed quickly.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. He was not as colorful as our friends over at Sky News in Australia were in their criticisms of Justin Trudeau, however.
Now, it's been a while since we talked about Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the neo-Marxist Ken doll, as I call him. He's in some serious trouble, Douglas. This week, his party lost a by-election in one of the safest Liberal seats in the country, in Toronto, St. Paul. And Trudeau's minority government is badly trailing the Conservatives in the polls. Is this the end for Trudeau, Douglas? Have the Canadian people finally woken up to the performative caring that lacks any real substance?
You absolutely put your finger on it, Rita. Performative caring. That's all that Justin Trudeau does. It's very hard to find a true thing he's ever said or a sincere thing he's ever said. The man is entirely artifice. He's an utter bimbo, a phrase that maybe one wouldn't use of a female politician these days, but I'm happy to use of Justin Trudeau. He's so grotesquely... He's a himbo, I suppose. I was in Canada last week in a couple of cities, and I can't tell you, Rita, the detestation that you find for Trudeau across the political board. A vast majority of Canadians want him to stand down now. He has really impressive opposition now. I think that Pierre Poilievre and the others on the Conservative side that are coming along, they're very impressive people are now facing off against Trudeau. I think he's absolutely toast because finally, we've got to that stage where being a sort of superannuated drama teacher, turns out you can fool some people for a little while, but not for all that long. Everyone in Canada who wants to see through Justin Trudeau has seen through him. I don't think anyone will regret finally seeing the back of him.
I should say, I love the idea of a himbo, although I didn't know bimbo was not, I thought bimbo was gender neutral. I didn't know it was actually a gendered word. So I don't know if himbo is here to stay. His pronouns are he, himbo, I guess now.
Well, I like the line that says you can fool some of the people some of the time. And I say, yes, and 10 seconds longer if you're in blackface. One of the many times Justin Trudeau donned another cloak around himself. So.
Yeah, Rita Panahi is fantastic. I love her on Sky News. Douglas Murray is just an international treasure. But like when Justin Trudeau is noticed in this way, because the global media used to, and I think Rita alluded to this, the global media used to love him. He was this sort of like prince-like figure that they talked about the way they talk about the royals. And now he's just this global laughingstock.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, actually. I saw another clip pop up today from an Indian news outlet, and they were talking smack about Trudeau as well, pairing him with Macron out of France and Sunak as well. So this was kind of let's talk about all the crazy leaders of countries across the world. But yeah, I really like what Murray said there, which is essentially that if you're as fake and empty as he said Trudeau was, people will only buy what you're saying for so long before, of course, they see through your lies, essentially.
Yeah, what do you think, William?
I wish the Prime Minister wouldn't leave the country anymore. I'm embarrassed as a Canadian every time he goes internationally on a trip, and other people discover just what a terrible person we have as our Prime Minister. It's like, look, we all know here at home what a travesty you are. Could you please stop going around the world and letting other people know as well? As a Canadian, I find it embarrassing.
Yeah, I think you're quite right about that. Well, let's bring it a little bit closer to home again and talk Alberta. I don't know which of you wants to kick this off.
Probably William, considering he lives in Calgary.
Well, our mayor, Jyoti Gondek, not widely beloved already, has managed to achieve something I think is incredible. She's managed to become less popular than Justin Trudeau in Calgary. And had you asked me, I would have said that was impossible. But the fact is, she managed to achieve a disapproval rating there, if you look, of 64%. But my favorite two numbers are the strongly approve and the strongly disapprove. Strongly disapprove is at a whopping 48%. That's 1 in 2 Calgarians think she's doing a truly terrible job, and fewer than 1 in 10 at 7% strongly approve. I mean, that is an approval rating, I think, slightly below the Ebola virus in terms of overall popularity. So, well done, Mayor Gondek. You've done something remarkable.
She has been a unifying figure.
Yes, she has. She is
unified 93% against her.
It is a remarkable achievement. For those of us who've never really liked Mayor Gondek, it's gratifying to see more and more Calgarians getting on board the "wow, isn't she terrible" train.
Yeah, Gondek had an approval rating, obviously, of 26% compared to Trudeau's 28%. But speaking quickly on unification, from that study, which was done by ThinkHQ, the president said something along the lines of, normally when when disasters happen, like the water crisis, he said residents rally around their mayor. But then he said the opposite has happened with Gondek in light of Calgary's recent water crisis. He said if they have supported her handling it in any way, shape, or form, it's overshadowed by other issues that they disapprove of, because obviously during the crisis, her ratings have gone down, not up, which is what he expected to happen.
Oh, interesting. And then now we, of course, have a new leader of the NDP in Alberta, Naheed Nenshi, who has made one of his first orders of business trying to basically have nothing to do with Jagmeet Singh, who we talked about a little bit earlier. But interestingly enough, I think the federal or the UCP, their line of attack on this has been to link him instead to Justin Trudeau more than the federal NDP. They actually pretty soon out of the gate, I think, less than 5 days after he was the NDP leader, they came out with this ad.
New NDP leader Naheed Nenshi is Justin Trudeau's choice for Alberta. That's Nenshi helping Justin Trudeau defeat Stephen Harper in the 2015 federal election. When asked about Nenshi running for the NDP, Trudeau called Nenshi a strong mayor and said we should welcome his candidacy. Trudeau even tried to get Nenshi to run for his federal Liberal Party. We've had enough of Trudeau in Ottawa. We don't need one in Alberta. Naheed Nenshi, Trudeau's choice for Alberta.
William, does that line of thing, does that work, or is that just the UCP having some fun?
Well, I love an attack ad. It must be my time in politics. People say they hate attack ads. I love them. I would only watch political attack ads if given the choice. And no,
from the west to the east to the west to the east.
I think this is a pretty strong lie. Nenshi likes to paint himself as this nonpartisan, or in his speak, a post-partisan politician. He chose the color purple because it was neither liberal red nor conservative blue. But the fact is, he's a lefty mayor. He was a lefty mayor. He's now the leader of a lefty political party, and he's going to have to reconcile the fact that he played footsie with the Trudeau Liberals for a long time and is now trying to get elected in a province that does not like the Trudeau Liberals. And so the fact that the UCP is starting early, I think, is good. Nengchi's forte, or his area of strength, would be perceived to be Calgary. But when he left office, he was far from universally liked. A lot of people thought he had overstayed his welcome. And frankly, they didn't like his arrogance and his thin-skinned nature, his inability to build a consensus on city council. And now you've got him leading a party that a lot of Albertans feel just doesn't understand this province. So I wish the UCP well in their attempt to remind voters of just how friendly Mr. Nengchi was with Mr. Trudeau. And we'll see if that is something that Albertans rally around when the next election happens.
Yeah, speaking quickly on Nengchi's approval ratings from that Think HQ survey, that same one about Gondek, in June 2014, he had an approval of 74%, but then the latest one before he ended his tenure was 57% by May 2021. So his approval ratings did drop quite a bit as his time as Calgary's mayor. But really, the way the NDP, the Alberta NDP, is going to win the next provincial election, the only possible way is through gathering support from rural Alberta. This is why they lost the last provincial election. The Conservatives cleaned house in rural Alberta. I mean, it was like they literally won all the seats. So the NDP needs to figure out how can we capture rural Alberta, and I think the Alberta Conservatives pairing Nengchi with Trudeau will not help him there, because I don't imagine anyone in rural Alberta really likes Trudeau.
Yeah, and to be honest, I kind of wonder if he would have had a shot, and he must have considered it, if he would have had a shot at federal Liberal leader had he just waited things out for, a year and a half until Trudeau resigns. Like, I don't know how much broad appeal he has within the Liberal movement nationally. Surely that wouldn't have been totally out of left field, would it, William?
No, I don't think it is. The thing that probably would stand against him is it'd be extremely hard to be Liberal leader from Alberta under current circumstances. He'd be there wouldn't be a seat in this province that's particularly safe.
He would have to find a seat in actually even anywhere. He couldn't find one, not even St. Paul's.
No, that's true. So either he would have to run in a different part of the country where maybe he doesn't have nearly as much name recognition, nearly as much of an existing political infrastructure, or face a riding in Alberta where the federal tour would have to land every 3 days in order for him to door knock in his riding without trying to lose it. The other problem for Mr. Nengchi, of course, is he's widely regarded as not a team player. He likes to go his own way. He really struggled on council to build coalitions of support around his issues. He just was too arrogant and too egotistical. And I think he would have that very same problem running to be prime minister, where you absolutely need a team of people around you that you can count on. And I think it'll be a problem he faces here in Alberta. He's not used to this party political realm. He's not used to provincial politics as someone who's ever engaged in it. And I think he'll find being a party leader very challenging, given his personality.
Yeah, if he couldn't lead a council, like leading a caucus is, a thankless job at the best of times. And I don't know, Isaac, if you're familiar with this, but how much diversity is there within the NDP caucus ideologically? Like, how many different perspectives and positions are there that a leader has to, keep rowing in the same direction in that party?
Well, I don't know, because something that was maybe showed the diversity of opinions a bit was during the NDP leadership race, wherein some of the prospective leaders stood against the carbon tax and others didn't. So obviously there was some leeway there, I guess. But outside of that, I'm not too sure.
I mean, look, I think it'll be interesting because he wants this divorce from the federal NDP. He's putting it to the members to vote. If the members are split on that, already he showed that he is not necessarily where they are. Maybe they're for it, maybe they're against it. I have no idea. Do you have any sense on how members would vote for that, William?
That's a really interesting question. And, there's a lot of people in this province with deep NDP roots. these, Rachel Notley's father was an NDP politician and held in quite high esteem back from when the party did have some support outside of the cities, when it was seen as on the side of farmers and other people working in
it was the old prairie populist NDP, certainly
absolutely.
not the woke he, him, they, them and today's NDP. Yeah.
No, unrecognizable than today's NDP. You're absolutely right. But the fact is, Isaac's point about them trying to win support outside of the cities, it's one of the many things the NDP is going to have to do. I don't think Mayor Naheed Nenshi is the emissary to rural Alberta that I would have personally chosen. A man who I'm not convinced has ever been outside a city in his life. But, whether or not the party supports the divorce, even if they vote to do it, I don't think everybody's going to be happy about it. And then what happens when you've split the NDP party? What happens?
Rachel Notley is very much against it as recently as a couple of weeks ago.
Absolutely. She came out right before the vote and said this is a terrible idea. And it reinforces the message that, to borrow a phrase from the federal Conservative Party, Naheed Nenshi might just be visiting a New Democrat Party. He might not really be someone who is wedded to this party that he now leads. His big win gives him some latitude for sure. He's got a bit of runway to figure out what he wants to do. But I think, first of all, he has to understand how not to break the NDP coalition. And divorcing itself from the federal party might make political sense in terms of how unpopular Jagmeet Singh is here, especially his opposition to the energy sector. But if he loses the hearts and minds of those people who have door knocked for New Democrats for decades, who write the checks, who work the phone banks, who organize the unions, which I'm told is a very big thing in the New Democrats. These are people you don't want to drive away from the party. And they're the ones who are most likely to oppose getting rid of that federal NDP association.
All right. Any final thoughts on this, Isaac?
Not really. Just quick. I don't think that
ends with a bang.
No matter what happens with the Alberta NDP, I don't think they stand a chance in the next election, but we'll see.
All right, fair enough. That does it for us. This has been an amazing discussion. I hope you'll tune in next week or catch Isaac on Daily Brief in his reporting. Catch William in our very raucous HR department, which is basically just William. And you can catch the Andrew Lawton Show daily at 1 p.m. Eastern. But remember, everything you've heard has been off the record.
The Nenshi thing is very interesting. Talk about trying to put a square peg in a round hole. This is someone who I would have probably bet some amount of money wouldn't have entered partisan provincial politics or federal politics, just because it was so anathema to who he was as a politician. But, maybe he's at a loose end. Maybe after he was done being mayor of Calgary, he just found himself sitting at home bored, binging episodes of Cupcake Wars or whatever it is he does. And he decided to try this instead. But who knows? I guess we'll see if the Nenshi charm can get out of the mothballs and start working its magic again.
I'm guessing that happens to a lot of politicians, much like a professional athlete, let's say, wherein something is just your entire life and then it's gone completely, and you're like, well, what do I do now, right?
Politics also has a lot of enablers. There's always someone in someone's life that's going to tell them they should do something. Like Frank Baylis, who's like a nobody Liberal MP, a one-term Liberal, was saying to CBC, I've had people approach me to run. Like, who? Who are these people?
I did have to Google who he was. I mean, I like to consider myself reasonably well informed.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, I shall Google who this man is and see what his deal is. And I thought, it's a one-term Liberal MP who nobody's ever heard of. Boy, doesn't that just reflect on the weakness.
Yeah, an Anglo-Quebecer too. They never stand a chance. But
I mean, wow. Boy, it used to be that the heavyweights said, "Oh, I would be Liberal leader," because it was a virtual guaranteed path to being prime minister. And now it's like no names are putting their names forward. So, gosh, how the mighty have fallen.